Let me now bring in Jay Newton-Small of Time Magazine, along with Sabrina Siddiqui with The Guardian. Thanks, ladies, for joining me. Appreciate it.
Morning, Kristen.
Thank you. Jay, I want to start with you and this New York Times report over the weekend that looks into Donald Trump's past relationships with women. He's pushing back hard, as Katie Tur has been reporting. But regardless, this is an optics problem. It feeds into the narrative that Donald Trump has a woman's issue. Now, in the primary, these types of things didn't really hurt him. Is it going to be different in the general election?
Absolutely, Kristen. It's a huge problem for Donald Trump in the general election. You can win Republican primaries, especially when you have a divided field with several candidates, off of basically the support of male white voters. And that's not to say that Donald Trump hasn't drawn some women. In fact, he's drawn in some primaries upwards of half of Republican women overall. But Republican women make up a relatively small percentage of the electorate overall. So women are the single largest voting bloc in America. They make up 53% of the electorate, and they tend to vote 10% more than 10% more than men do in general elections. So they're a huge swing vote, right? But that most of those voters are not Republican women. They're independents and they're Democratic women. And overall, polls show Donald Trump is underwater with women anywhere from 50% to 70% or more, and that's really problematic, since a Republican has not actually won the women's vote since 1988. And in order to win the White House, he has to mitigate the loss of women to at least less than 10 percentage points, which is a huge lift for him. I mean, that's a 40 to 60 point lift at this point with him. And these stories, like the New York Times story over the weekend, do not help him at all. He really needs to start courting women, start appealing, especially to independent women and particularly Democratic women, if he has any hope whatsoever of winning the White House.
Right, and Hillary Clinton courting those independent and swing voters very aggressively. Sabrina, I want to get your take. One of Donald Trump's key points is that, hey, I'm not a politician, and that his past is allowed to be a little bit different than someone who has been a career politician. So how does he separate his past as a businessman versus who he is right now, someone who is now the standard bearer for the GOP?
Well, I think the problem is that there's decades worth of material where Donald Trump has made very gendered comments about women, and in this election cycle alone, he has made very gender-specific attacks against Carly Fiorina, Megyn Kelly, Heidi Cruz, and now Hillary Clinton. One of the first attacks he unveiled as he shifted gears toward the general was that she has nothing else going for her other than to be able to play the woman card. And we know that the Hillary Clinton campaign really engaged on that front. They raised a lot of money off of those comments, and you can expect this will continue over the next 6 months. But back to Jay's point, I think one of the important challenges to point out is that the Republican Party already faces a deficit when it comes to women voters. In 2012, Barack Obama won the women's vote by 11 points. When you broke that down among single women, it was by 36 points. He only lost married women narrowly. They voted more Republican in recent elections. And the problem with Donald Trump is now there's a presumptive nominee who married women say, a majority of married women say they can't vote for. So Hillary Clinton also has an opportunity here to court not just independent women voters, but also potentially some Republican women voters. As Jay said, Donald Trump is underwater anywhere from 60 to 70 points.
That is a really interesting point. And Jay, I want to get your take on this broader issue for the Republican Party. Reince Priebus right now in the position of having to defend Donald Trump on this issue, but also over his taxes. How frustrated, based on your conversations with your sources, is he getting right now? And also, how concerned is he about those down ballot races?
There's a lot of concern in the Republican Party for down ballot races and Donald Trump's potential effect on it. And you see that already with a large number of vulnerable Republicans who are up for re-election opting not to go to the convention, offering kind of half-hearted endorsements, like someone like Kelly Ayotte, who's facing a very steep challenge in New Hampshire for her Senate seat, saying she's not endorsing Donald Trump, but she's supporting him, which is really splitting hairs at that point. But I mean, there is a huge amount of concern in the party, especially because, you know, if this ends up being a year like 2012, where it's a war on women, the Democrats go around to every candidate and say, you know, for the next 6 months, do you believe what Donald Trump said about here about women? Do you believe that what Donald Trump said there about women? That it becomes incredibly damaging, and that is how basically that was the formula Democrats used to win Barack Obama's re-election in 2012, but also they did very well down ballot as well in 2012. And so there's a huge risk for Republicans here that they're very, very aware of, and that they're being very careful to separate out the down ballot tickets, giving them a lot of space to make distance from Donald Trump from the top of the ticket.
And Sabrina, just very quickly, your final thoughts on all of this and how it could impact the GOP more broadly.
Well, I think the down ballot question is one of the more undercovered stories here, because as much as Jay said, some of these candidates for the Senate who are facing tough re-elections, like Kelly Ayotte, like Rob Portman, like Mark Kirk in Illinois, they're going to try and separate their own campaigns from Donald Trump. The Democrats are essentially going to tie all of the Republican candidates, whether they're running for the Senate or the House, to his candidacy. You've already seen the DSCC, which of course is working to retake the Senate from Republican hands, unveil what they're calling Trump cards, where they're trying to line up on policy where a lot of these candidates have matched up to some of what Donald Trump has said on the campaign trail. So I think you're going to expect down the road to see Democrats paint the entire party, Republican Party, as a party of Trump. That's going to be one of the key lines that we hear moving forward. And certainly in a presidential year, they stand to do better, especially where the map is in their favor.